Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the invitation to be part of this. I just want to mention that the Shared Value Africa initiative was launched in May 2018, and our mandate is to shift business mindsets to the business management concept of shared value that hails from Harvard. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the Sustainable Development Goals, but first I want to say to Galen, thank you very much for your presentation, because Galen, purpose is what we believe as shared value practitioners is the start for any organization. Unless you're a purpose-led organization, you are not going to be able to be sustainable in the future, because COVID-19 has changed everything for us. So if we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, and I think we can all remember the Millennium Development Goals, and the Millennium Development Goals is all of our responsibility. It doesn't matter if you're in business or if you're a citizen or if you're a mom, or a dad, it's everybody's responsibility. And people always say to me, why? I said, okay, well, let's look at no poverty. So if we look at no poverty, we look at no hunger, and I specifically want to focus on zero hunger. So if you ask yourself sitting here today is, how much food do you waste? If we look at water, how much water do we waste? So all of us have a responsibility to contribute to Agenda 2030. That's what we call the Sustainable Development Goals, because it was compiled by the UN and 167 countries with the private sector as well. And these are all social issues that we're facing in society today. My biggest one that I always look at is gender equality, because gender equality is in the workplace is still very much needed, because it can make such a huge difference to our economy. And then also for me on gender equality, if you look at that, most of the countries that flattened the curve before anybody else were all led by women. So I rest my case. Number 17 on the goals is partnerships, and that's very, very important. Next slide, please. And that's why number 17 is about partnerships, because collaboration is absolutely key. The days of us doing things on our own as organizations is over. COVID-19 has shown that to us, because we had to come together in order to help government, to help each other, to help the healthcare system out there. So there is no collaboration is absolutely key to the future. And that's what we're saying. Business cannot do it on their own. Government cannot do it on their own. Society can't do it on their own. And that's where shared value brings everybody together from a collaboration perspective. Next slide. Thank you. So we don't have a lot of time today for me to try and land the concept, the definition and concept of shared value, but I'm going to try my best. So what we normally do from a shared value perspective is that we look at social impact, because that's what it's about. It's about creating economic value and creating value for society. So the corporate thinking around social impact is shifting a little bit. And I want to go start off with philanthropy. So what we've seen in COVID-19 with all of these organizations that's helping government, that is contributing to funds, that is buying the necessary equipment and everything, that is what philanthropy is about. So you donate to a worthy cause, or you give money to a worthy cause. Then we move into corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility is an absolute given for every single company. It is about corporate social investment. We have to all give our 2.5% net profit after tax to those pillars that government has identified. We have to be sustainable. We've got to adhere to our BBBE codes, and we've got to mitigate risk and harm. So corporate social responsibility is about being sustainable as an organization. because you have to pay your taxes and your salaries and everything. So you've got philanthropy, you've got corporate social responsibility, you've got CSI, you've got triple BEE, and then you have shared value. Shared value, when Professor Michael Porter and Mark Kramer came up with it, they've been involved for years in CSI and in corporate social responsibility with huge organizations. And they were saying that the impact that it was making from a social perspective on society and on the environment was really minuscule if you look at at what these companies were doing. So the shared value concept, business management concept, is based on the fact that organizations can address a societal issue that's holding their business back, find a new opportunity, and create a competitive edge. Next slide, please. So if we look at the criteria to assess a shared value opportunity, as I said to you in the Sustainable Development Goals, you've got 16 social issues that needs to be addressed. And now we also know that your bigger organizations, that's part of the UN Global Compact, they have to actually report on the Sustainable Development Goals. So if you look at the criteria to assess a shared value opportunity, you look at that social issue, as I said, that holds your business back. And then you create a business case around it. So you do your research, you find out, who your competitors are in that space, what is going to set you aside from a competitor's perspective. You find out if it's feasible for the organization, and then you create your shared value initiative. Okay, so as I said, not a lot of time, but here's the shared value framework that Professor Michael Porter and Mark Kramer from Harvard created about 10 years ago. And it is about policies and practices. And here we talk about, when you talk about policies and practices, you talk about operations and you talk about people. And if your policies and practices as an organization is perfectly matched, then you can enhance the competitiveness of your company while you simultaneously advance economic and social conditions in the communities in which you operate. So the first pillar that we have on the shared value framework is about reconceiving products and markets. I want to give you a quick example there. So Safaricom, a telecoms company in Kenya, wanted to increase their competitive edge. So what they did is they identified a social issue, and that was access to financial services for people in Kenya. So they're a telecoms company. They introduced, and I'm sure you're all familiar or you've heard about it. So they've introduced M-Pesa, which is payment via it's a mobile electronic payment via your mobile phone. And today, as all of us here on this call, I mean, there's 51 million people in Kenya and 31 million of them use M-Pesa. So that's 60% of the population that use M-Pesa. Last year, Safaricom, I think they contributed 6.5% to the Kenyan GDP. So a very, very big success story from that perspective. And what they did is they addressed a societal issue, because now so many Kenyans had access to financial services. They could build a record, on their mobile phone. Nobody had to send money with a taxi or with somebody to the family member. So it's really, if you have the time, go and have a look at this case study, because it's a really good one. Then when we look at redefining productivity in the value chain, so quick example of this is Nestle. I think about 8 years ago or 9 years ago, they lost their #1 spot as the biggest coffee supplier in the world. So then they had to go back to the drawing board to find out what the problem was. And the problem was their value chain and their supply chain. So what happened is that the farmers weren't delivering when they're supposed to, and the quality of the products weren't great. And this was in a very particular area in Côte d'Ivoire. So what they did is they invested the money, they trained the farmers right from the beginning, because most of the farmers, they found out, came from an informal farming background. And they could gain back their #1 spot as as the #1 coffee supplier in the world, because now they had a reliable supply chain, they had a quality product, and the farmers within the communities also now had a route to market, and they also had a guaranteed income. So kids that used to work on the farm for their dad can now go to school. They don't have to work on the farm anymore. So it had an enormous ripple effect on the community, within these areas as well. Enabling local cluster development. An example on that is that, as it says, they proactively grow markets and strengthen key players and institutions in the market. So Cisco, and we're all familiar with Cisco, I'm sure, always had problems with Cisco engineers. So what they decided, they wanted to increase their footprint across the world. So what they did is they started what they called the Network Academy. Today, they train 1 million young people in 165 countries at 10,000 learning institutions. And it's not all for them that they're training these people. They have undertaken to start this academy to train young people in ITC, so that whenever they go into a country or into an area, they never have a problem finding the system engineers. So I think, is the video next? I'm not 100% sure. I think the video is next, yes. So before we start the video, I just want to say, I want you to watch it, and then I'll explain to you afterwards, what the social issue was that they addressed and what the business results were out of this. So you can play it, thanks.
Mkopa imenisaidia sana. Zile pesa nilikuwa natumia hapo nyuma zilikuwa nyingi sana, za mafuta ya taa, za tochi zile za ngine za kawaida. Tulikuwa na changamoto mingi, lakini wakati nilinunua mkopa ilinisaidia zaidi.
Mkopa naitumia nyumbani, sikuwa na kifaa ya light. Nilikuwa nasikia kifaa ya light kutoka zamani, na nikangoja stima, sikupata stima, nikasema nitachukua mkopa. Sikuwa na light, nilikuwa nanunua mafuta ya taa. Kwa sasa hata sinunui mafuta ya taa.
Mkopa does a number of things, but mainly it is selling solar products, pay as you go, and our products include the lighting systems and also the TV systems that we have now developed, and there are other products that we put onto the customer as well.
Kwa mwezi nilikuwa natumia 1,800 ya mafuta ya taa. Sasa hiyo pesa situmio, hiyo pesa sasa nina save. Ndio kwanza nilinunua mashini naye. Na wache hivyo nimeongeza ng'ombe kutoka wakati ule ambao nilinunua mashini. Kwa hivyo kuna benefit nyingi za kutumia mkopa.
Now we are not at the customer who was using kerosene. Now you're at the customer who wants to watch news at night. He wants his kids to do homework. He wants his kids to understand we are just not in Machakos like we are now. There's America. There's a lot of things happening around the world. So it's like opening eyes to the rest of the world, improving people's lives generally.
Kwa kusema ukweli, nimepata faida na ninasikia mzuri, nasikia kuendelea kwa sababu kwa zile vitu zingine ambazo zinakuja mpya, sasa mkopa niendelee.
Just a little bit quickly about Mkopa. It was the first pay-as-you-go solar energy system in the world, actually, and it was launched in Kenya. And if you look at that story of the video, so what Mkopa decided, the entrepreneurs who started Mkopa, is that they wanted to address a social issue. And that social issue was access to electricity. Because today, about 800 million people on our continent still don't have access to electricity. So what they wanted to do was to provide access to electricity, but also at an affordable price. So they changed about 800 at the moment. They're working with 800,000 families, and I'm sorry about the noise because I'm sure you can hear it of my animals. So Mkopa is at the moment serving 800,000 families across Kenya and Uganda. I think very soon they're going to Tanzania and to Uganda as well. From a business perspective, they are their annual revenue at the moment is $42.5 million US. They're doing new product developments all the time. So if you look at one of the pillars of the shared value model, that new product development, so that they can continue to grow their market. They save the average person $18 a year. And I know it's not a lot of money, but for people who don't have a lot of money going around, it is a bit. So that $18 a year amounts to 13.5 million that goes back into the economy if you look at the number of families that they serve. So that's really a great shared value story. And they won an award last year, actually, a shared value award as one of the top shared value companies in Africa. Next slide, please. Lots of companies doing it. I wish we had the time. I would love to tell you about every single one of them. Nando's is doing it with the chili farmers in Mozambique. You know, as I've told you the story about Nestle, I told you about Safaricom as well. You're gonna hear from Carla about Anglo American that's doing some great stuff as well. And yeah, not everybody's getting it 100% right because there's always the human factor involved, but there are big organizations out there that is creating economic value and creating value for society. Next slide, please. So here's the shared value definition from Professor Michael Porter and Mark Kramer from Harvard. So policies and practices, as I said previously, is about operations and people. So if your policies and practices, you know, is set up as an organization and you really as a leader have recognized that your people are your biggest asset from a business perspective, that will enhance the competitiveness of your company. And also, while simultaneously advancing the economic and social conditions in the communities in which you operate. As I told you the story about Nestle, the farmers are now, the kids can go to school because they've got more money, moving around in the community. Thank you. Next slide. So yeah, creating shared value is about profit with purpose. And it was Larry Fink that said, profit and purpose is inextricably linked. And therefore, society and business is inextricably linked. So I want to end off here with this slide talking about purpose, as Galen said earlier on. And again, I just want to say that for us, from a shared value perspective, the very first step as an organization that you take is to ensure that you've really defined your purpose and that it's understood by all. Because what also Larry Fink said, you know, I think we all know him, the chairman and CEO of BlackRock. Without a sense of purpose, no company, either public or private, can achieve its full potential. So if we go back again to the examples that I gave you, Safaricom's purpose is to transform lives. If you look at Google, their purpose is making information universally accessible. And you have to admit they're getting it right. You know, when you look at what Galen said on Patagonia, we're in business to save the planet. And if you unpack exactly what they're doing, they're definitely doing that. If you look at Nestle, they're enhancing the quality of life and contributing to a healthier society. And then we also have Discovery in our world that makes people healthier and enhance and protect lives. So I just want to close off by saying that shared value is about sustainability. It's about inclusivity. It's about access. It's about innovation, ecosystems, your supply chain, your value chain. But most of all, it is about people. And the biggest part of shared value is leadership, because we have to lead. And purpose-led organization we've seen, I mean, as Galen also mentioned, Professor Michael Porter in a recent speech said that they've just done some recent research that they outperform their competitors on a scale of 10 to 1. So I want to leave you with this note, so that we don't know what the future holds. However, we have the power to create our future. Thank you, everybody, for the time. Thanks.